City of Shadows. Chapter 7. Web of Loyalty. The alleys of old Capelliano reeked of rain, rust, and fear. Victor stood by the shattered window of an abandoned warehouse, his silhouette outlined by the gray afternoon light. Smoke curled from the cigarette between his fingers, coiling like a whisper around the jagged glass before dissolving into the chilled air outside. Below, cars without license plates crept through puddles like predators. The kind that appeared only when someone was about to disappear forever. He knew they were watching, and he let them. Leonardo, the youngest of the Conti brothers, stepped into the room without bothering to close the door. His footsteps were sharp and impatient, like a warning shot before the real thing. He wasn't the type to wait in silence, not anymore. "They're here," he said curtly, wiping his damp hands on his coat. Giulio made his demands, not in our favor. Victor didn't turn immediately. He took one last drag from his cigarette, flicked it into a rusted coffee tin, and finally faced the man. His eyes were calm, but something behind them burned. "Of course not in our favor," Victor said, "because Giulio thinks we're the past, and he sees himself as the future." Leonardo narrowed his eyes. "Is he wrong?" Victor didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to an old crate in the corner, pulled back the lid, and reached inside. From the dust and shadows, he retrieved a pistol, plain, unmarked, but heavy with history. He holstered it wordlessly, his movements deliberate. "Tonight," he said, "we remind them that the past doesn't fade. It kicks the door off its hinges." They drove in silence through the industrial part of town, in an old Chevrolet that rattled with every pothole like it was held together by rust and vengeance. Leonardo, in the passenger seat, checked his sawed-off shotgun like he was preparing for Judgment Day. Victor stared out the window. Beyond the glass, the city throbbed like an infected wound. Streetlights flickered, sirens wailed in the distance, and over everything hung a single question: who still owes who? The meeting was set in a crumbling concrete hangar once used for arms shipments. Now it housed nothing but echoes and dust, and the weight of decisions made years ago. Inside, Giulio was already waiting. He sat at a folding table with 3 men, his brother Marco, an attorney with 2 clean glasses, and a thin, forgettable stranger with eyes like broken glass. Giulio stood as Victor entered. "Morano," he said, voice measured. "Didn't think you'd show in person." "I always show," Victor replied, "when betrayal is the price of silence. I like to see the eyes of the men trying to bury me." A long pause. Even the rain outside seemed to still. "This isn't betrayal," Giulio said. "This is evolution. You clung to old codes. We're building something new. No fake loyalty, no ghosts." "Loyalty isn't fake," Victor said softly, "until someone shoves a knife between your ribs. You, Giulio, bled the elders dry. You broke balance, and now you think you can take everything." Giulio's eyes darkened. "I already have." And then the warehouse exploded into violence. A gunshot cracked the silence. The table flipped. Marco screamed, clutching his shoulder. Leonardo dropped to the floor, firing into the chaos. Bullets slammed into concrete and steel. Shadows jerked and twisted in the flickering overhead light. Victor moved like a man rehearsing a dance, not frantic, but sharp and efficient. He wasn't firing to kill, not yet. He was firing to remind them that he was still here, still a problem, still breathing. Seconds passed like lifetimes. Then it was over. Dust and silence settled like snowfall. Back in the car, Leonardo groaned as he wrapped a strip of fabric around his bleeding forearm. "This is just the start," he said, teeth clenched. Victor lit another cigarette. "Yes," he murmured, "but now they know. We're not staying quiet." Meanwhile, across the city, A man in a crisp suit leaned over a glowing monitor. Footage from the warehouse flickered on the screen. He watched without blinking, lips curling into something unreadable. He picked up the phone. "Begin phase 2, he said. "Morano's made his move. Now we make ours." Chapter 8. The Quiet Ones. It was just after midnight when Victor returned to the safe house. The building, an old butcher shop repurposed with steel doors and bulletproof windows, sat nestled between a closed-down theater and a liquor store that never locked its door. To the untrained eye, it looked abandoned. But Victor knew every blind spot in the alley, every creak in the steps, every shadow that didn't belong. Inside, the lights were dim. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and cigarette smoke. Maria was already there, leaning against the counter, a glass of bourbon in her hand. She wore black, like always, her dark hair tied back tight. Her eyes were sharp, always watching, always calculating. She didn't speak right away. Victor closed the door behind him, locked it, then crossed the room and poured himself a drink from the same bottle. Neither of them toasted. Neither of them needed to. "They moved faster than I thought," she said finally. "They were prepared," Victor replied. "Giulio wasn't just bluffing. He's building something organized. He has backing. He has money, and someone's helping him move it through the docks." Maria sipped. "That's not small time. That's state level." Victor looked down into his glass, as if it might show him something more than just amber reflections. "I need to find out who's bankrolling him," he muttered. Maria set her glass down. "No," she said. "You need to find the Quiet Ones." Victor froze. It was a name he hadn't heard in years, a whisper behind whispers. A group so silent, so careful, most people believed they were just myth. But Victor had once seen what they could do, and if they were involved. "You're sure?" he asked. Maria nodded. "They've been moving again, subtle but deliberate. Giulio's too loud to operate alone. Someone's guiding him, and there are only a few hands that quiet in this city." 2 days later, Victor stood outside a forgotten convent at the edge of the industrial district. The building, cracked and faded, was supposed to be abandoned, but even the rats gave it a wide berth. He entered through a side door, ducking into the cool, stale dark. Inside, rows of old pews stretched like ghosts across the floor. At the altar, a woman in gray was lighting candles, her motions slow and ritualistic. Her face was lined with years, but her eyes, when they met Victor's, were sharp as broken glass. "I heard you might come," she said. "You hear a lot, Elena." "I remember more," she corrected. "And I remember when you disappeared, like smoke in wind. I wasn't hiding, I was surviving. No difference anymore." Victor stepped closer. "I need names, quiet ones." She smiled slightly. "Of course you do, but names are heavy things. They come at a price. I'm not here to negotiate." "Then you'll get what you pay for, nothing." Silence. Then Victor pulled a small photo from his coat. He laid it on the altar. A man's face, blurred, grayscale, but familiar to Elena. "He's dead," she said. "I know," Victor replied. "But Giulio's using his route, his connections, his protocols." Now she looked at him with something almost like pity. "You don't know what you've stepped into," she said softly. "The Quiet Ones, they don't operate like we do. No territories, no soldiers, just information, leverage, silence, and they never play for second place." "I'm not looking to play," Victor said. "I'm looking to end this." Elena's smile faded. "Then you'll need more than bullets." She walked to a locked cabinet behind the altar, opened it, and handed him a thin file. Inside, names, locations, photos, bank routes, all written in precise, cold handwriting. They don't forgive, Victor, and they never forget. Later that night, Victor spread the file out across the safe house table. Maria stood beside him, scanning each page with practiced precision. 3 of these people are politicians, she said. And 2 are cops, Victor added. Maria shook her head. This isn't just a mafia war. This is a city being rewritten in real time. Victor didn't respond. He picked up one page, stared at the photo. A face from the past. A face that should have been buried. He folded it carefully and slid it into his jacket. I need to pay someone a visit, he said, before they disappear again. Who? He looked at her. The one man I thought would never betray me. Meanwhile, in a sleek office high above the skyline, Giulio was laughing. Not out of joy, but because, finally, the pieces were falling where he wanted. Across from him sat the thin stranger from the warehouse. No name, no voice, just presence. Giulio raised his glass. To the quiet ones, he said mockingly. The stranger didn't respond. He simply placed a single photo on the desk. Victor, standing outside the convent. Giulio's smile faded. So, he's digging deeper. The man nodded once. Giulio set down his drink. Then it's time we remind him why we don't fear ghosts.